Right, let's start that again. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Fundraising Talk. Today's topic is individual giving. You're probably all wondering what the 25th on the right-hand side of the screen is. It's not the 25th of the month. We are really excited to announce that this is our 25th webinar since we started this initiative. So thank you to Mel for working with me on this, and we are really proud, and here's to many, many more. And thank you to you, our audience, who have made this possible and grown this tribe and helped us grow this initiative. We've also got now 146 people on our WhatsApp group. So this tribe is really growing, and we're really, really proud of what we achieved. So thank you to you for joining us and making this possible. So
yes, Kelvin, before you go on, I want to just quickly say a thank you and also say our tribe is growing and it should continue to grow. So if you've got people that you would like to ask to join who you think would benefit, please let us know. We'll add them to the WhatsApp group. We'll make sure they get the notifications about our events. Just let us know.
And we're evolving every day. So there's some nice new things that we'll show you towards the end of today on new ideas we're bringing in. So as we always say, we are here merely to facilitate and drive the process. So this is a tribe. This is our initiative as a collective. And we really, really love engaging with our team and our tribe and look forward to growing this even more. All right, the normal rules for those that are new on the session. Please make sure that your video and your sound is muted. If you have questions, which we do encourage, please put them in the chat group, and we monitor the questions and we do Q&A. We also record the session, so it is being recorded. And let me check, we are recording. Yes, we are. Are we recording? Yes, we are.
Yes, we are.
It is recorded, and we have a YouTube channel where most, bar 2 or 3 that we didn't get right, on that YouTube channel. So there's a wealth of knowledge on the YouTube channel, which we'll share with you a little bit later. And it's public domain, so it's really great if you need resources or you need to touch up your training. But please use the recording. It's there for your knowledge. And put those questions in the chat box. Right, a little bit about us, the disruptors. We call ourselves that because a lot of people have said we've disrupted the sector. So those of you that don't know me, my name is Kelvin Glenn. I have an organization called Kaluma SA, which is a consulting company that works with charities, have been in the sector for many, many, many years, working across corporate affairs and corporate social investment, as well as civil society. And yeah, Melanie and I started this a number of months ago as our give back during COVID-19, and it's just grown and continues to grow, and we're really, really proud of what we've achieved. Melanie, over to you.
Definitely. Thanks, Kelvin. So my name is Melanie Jackson, if you don't know me. I also run a consultancy here in Cape Town, or the Freeze Zone, as we're calling it at the moment. Also have many years experience in the sector. Kelvin and I go back a long way, although he insists on saying we've known each other for many, many years. It's not that long, I promise, I'm not that old. But as Kelvin says, we're here to help. We don't see ourselves as being wild experts in the field. There's some stuff we know, but this is very much about shared experience, and we love getting questions from you. We love getting comments from you, and let's keep this going. I mean, we're 25 in. I'm looking forward to seeing what the next 25 look like.
Absolutely. Thank you, Melanie. All right. So we're diving straight in, individual giving.
We are. So the basic definition, I mean, we always start with the definition, is individual giving is when an individual, a person, a human being, not an entity, not a company, not a trust, donates money to a nonprofit. And within that individual sort of category, there are a lot of subcategories, and we're going to talk a little bit about those going forward. But this is our basic definition.
So where do you start? The first thing to do, like anything, is analyze. You need to look at your data. You need to understand what percentage of your income is coming from individual giving. In other words, it's not coming from a corporate, it's not coming from a trust, it's not coming from a grant. It's coming from Joe Public in the street. And basically it is about Joe Public in the street putting his hand in or her hand in their pockets and giving it to you in their personal capacity. So try and understand within your organization what percentage of your income is coming from them. And then we always say, unpack that. try and understand within the individual giving space, the demographic of the person that's giving to you. And ideally, you want to know their age, where they're from, their family dynamic if possible. Try and track how much they're giving you when. Do they give you every month? Do they give you on the third of the month? They give you every quarter, once a year? Are they giving cash? Are they donating time or services? So individual giving needs to be analyzed as far as any other donor. And it's important to understand this analysis so that you know what your risks are. You also can report back to your board and your senior management about your numbers and set some very, very robust targets on how to grow individual giving. And today is about sharing tips, tidbits, and trends about how to grow individual giving and how to make sure that individual giving, you've got all the tools and resources you need so that it can contribute towards your fundraising income.
Absolutely, Calvin. And something I wanted to add very quickly before we go on is in gathering all of this information about your donors, and these days it is so easy to do that. If they're so kind as to share their ID number with you, there's a lot of information you can actually glean just from that number alone, and it's not just their birthday. So make sure you get as much information as you can, but also make sure that you use it. Use it to segment your database. Use it to test different types of communication on different cohorts of donors. There is just so much you can do with that information. So now we're going to move on to what motivates people to give. And this is a very interesting one. One of the things that I tell a lot when we talk about individual giving, so I talk about Alan Clayton, who is one of my favorite fundraisers. He's a Scot and he's a real character. And Alan says the definition of giving is self-esteem. Because if you are so impoverished that all you can do is take, you have no self-esteem. Mm. And I found that to be a really powerful statement. And it speaks a lot to what motivates people to give. But there are some interesting little things that are what many years ago, Jill Ritchie used to refer to as hot buttons, things that make people donate to your cause. And sometimes it's pretty selfish. It's tax benefits. Nothing wrong with that. If you want a tax benefit by giving, I'm happy to take your money. The second point that you'll note that Calvin has made red. He has made it red for a reason. That is the single biggest reason people give us for not donating. Nobody asked me. Nobody said they needed it. And for all of those who are responsible for housework in your household, what is the big answer when you moan that nobody's helping you with the housework? It's people say, well, you didn't ask me you needed help. It's the same thing. People like to be asked, so keep that in mind. The availability of money, obviously, is a huge issue. And as we're seeing with COVID-19, that is, I think it's going to be with us for a while in terms of as a reason not to donate. People give out of duty, particularly when it's linked to their faith or something that their family does. It's become a tradition in the family. They give out of habit. I have some debit orders that I've had for so long that every now and again I notice that the money's coming off and I go, oh, right, yes, I donate to them. Oh, it's lovely. And carry on with my life. It's just become my habit. Affinity. And those who know me and who've listened to a couple of our speeches know that I speak a lot about an organization's why. And that you must be very clear about why you do what you do. And that affinity speaks to that why. If my why resonates with your why, I will give you money. Information, people learn about it, they like what they hear. Belief that they're making a difference. And that, I think, also ties a little back to what we were saying about self-esteem. If you believe that you're making a difference, it's going to make you feel good to hand that money over. And that is what a lot of people do. Do you want to move on to the next slide?
There we go.
Emergency. Now, this has limited appeal. Because what we're talking about here is emergency, like a natural disaster, like half of Beirut blows up one afternoon. We're not talking about we didn't manage our money properly and we're going to close our doors if you don't give us money. That is not an emergency. That's an absolute disaster. So we're talking about things like fires, floods. Certainly here in the Western Cape at this time of the year, informal settlements and townships are very vulnerable to flooding. And conversely, and it seems almost counterintuitive, very vulnerable to fires because of people trying to keep themselves warm. So that kind of emergency is what we're talking about here. And people are very generous. I mean, if you look at what happened when COVID first hit and people realized that children were going hungry because the schools were closed, there was a magnificent effort to step up and make sure that those kids were fed. So that's the kind of emergency we're talking about here. Hope. I like that one. We all need hope. We all need hope that the future's going to be better, that they're going to find a vaccine for COVID, that we're going to be able to go outside without masks on one of these days. Hope is a powerful motivator. If my why as an NPO resonates with a donor's why and it gives them hope, they will become donors. Donor recognition. Some people like to give because somebody pats them on the back, speaks to that self-esteem. That's okay. If that's what the donor needs, that's what the donor gets. As simple as that. Fear. Anyone who is a parent will know that fear is a great motivator, especially fear of the Wi-Fi being switched off. And whether you're talking about there but for the grace of God go I, or I've been in that situation and I don't ever want to be in it again and I empathize with someone who's struggling with it now, fear, greatest motivator. Values. And again, it comes back to the why. My values resonate with your values. I become a donor. And a sense of community. I think we're seeing that in what we're doing today and what we're doing with Fundraising Talk. Everyone needs a tribe. Sometimes that tribe is a nonprofit that you donate to, and that's also fine. And people just like to help. And we, at heart, you know, we all have our moments, but at heart, we want to help. We want to help people. We want to see them doing well. So there are a lot of reasons that people give for donating. And when we look at designing an individual giving campaign, we need to look at what button are we pressing in this campaign? And is it a button that enough people are going to be motivated to press? So it's a really important, think about all those things when you're designing your annual plans for individual giving.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mel. That's so powerful and so important. And I was chatting to somebody in the UK yesterday, and they were talking about COVID-19. And I was saying, so have you increased your individual giving as an individual? And this is in a country where the postal service works, where they still do direct mailing. And she said, no, because nobody's asked me. So don't presume that putting stuff on social media is an ask. You need to do a campaign to your database and give them the opportunity, because if you don't ask, as much as we one tribe, we love each other, the person sitting next to you on this webinar is going to ask, and they're going to take the money out of your donor's pocket. So thank you for those pointers, Mel. Very, very important. So we've spoken about the importance of it. We've spoken about the data. We've spoken about why people give. So what do you need to do to grow your individual giving as a charity or a nonprofit organization? What does your organization need? And we're going to share with you some ideas so that you can grow that individual giving. We've put this together as far as some steps. And you'll see it's a circle, because this is for every single donor, not every single campaign, but every single individual that you're talking to. First of all, you've got to identify how you're going to get this database, where you're going to source these people you're going to talk to get them on as far as your donor acquisition. Is it through sign-up newsletters? Is it through acquisition of databases? Is it through campaigns? Identify your donor. And then most critical is ask. If you don't ask, you won't get. So you need to ask your donor. And we'll talk a little bit later about some of the ideas around asking. Ask for that first donation. And remember, with a new donor acquisition, like anything in life, we all test the waters. We don't rush out and put everything into the first basket we see. So your donor is going to test you. They're going to start with a once-off gift or a small gift and see how it goes. And as you nurture that donor, you will grow. And if you're doing your job properly, because if they're given to you once, they have an affiliation with your cause. They understand your why. They buy into what you're trying to achieve. So if they give to you once, they should give to you again. But your first ask is your important one. And most crucial, ladies and gentlemen, most crucial is the thank yous. It really, really, really irks me when I hear from people saying, but I gave a donation, I never got a thank you. Or I had to write to ask for my Section 18A. Or I had to ask for my thank you letter. You have to thank your donor. And whether it's a 50 Rand donation or a 50 million Rand donation, remember they are equally as important. Because if that person's giving you 50 Rand, they have, out of the generosity of their heart, given to your organization, entrusted you to support the beneficiary or the cause that you are working on. It is your responsibility and respect back to that donor to make sure they get that thank you letter, and as quickly as possible. And with technology these days, there's no excuse. And please look at your thank you letters. Those of you that haven't seen our webinar on storytelling, go and find it on the YouTube channel. There's some lovely tidbits there as well and ideas. But thank you is so important. Nurture that donor. Doesn't matter if it's 50 Rand. Nurture that donor. Because that donor could be with you for the rest of their life and eventually leave a legacy after their life. They could grow their giving. As they mature in life, they could give more, especially the younger donors. If you're getting a 25 or 30-year-old into your database, nurture them. Because if they can give you now for the next 20 or 30 years, they can give you every month. But if you don't nurture them and don't thank them and don't ask them, they're not going to give. And ideally what you want to do is get to the sixth step, which is to get more money out of them. If you've identified correctly, you've done the right ask, they've given you their first donation, you've thanked them, and you've nurtured them. There is no reason why they shouldn't give you a second gift, a third gift, and a recurring gift. So, as we always bleed, it takes 10% effort to keep a donor and 110% effort to find a donor or renew that donor. So, once you've got that donor, it's not a lot of work to keep them, because if they've given to you once, unless you really make a huge pawpaw, there's no reason why they shouldn't give it to you again. Moving on.
Can I just add to that before
Yes.
you go on? I love storytelling. I used to be a journalist in my deep and distant past. And one of the stories I always think of when we talk about this is I worked with an international disability organization, and it had what we called ourselves sort of a member organization in Australia. Anyway, this elderly lady used to give every week. What she would do, she would go shopping, and anytime she got a special deal or there was something she didn't need, she would put the cash that she'd saved aside and would phone this organization in Australia and tell somebody to come and fetch it. So this went on for, probably years. And one day a young fundraiser answered the phone and he said, well, you know, ma'am, you could actually just pop it into our bank account when you're at the bank again, or, you know, do an internet transfer if you have access to the internet. And she responded by saying, no, I'd really like for somebody to keep coming to fetch it, because otherwise I wouldn't see anybody.
Wow.
And that was always a very powerful thing for me, because while she wasn't giving a lot of money, she was giving the little bits and pieces that she'd saved off of her weekly groceries. She may have had assets like a home, something that she could leave the organization in her will. And the way that she was being treated by the organization meant that it was very likely that they would be the ones to inherit from her estate.
Wow.
And you'll be pleased to know that that young fundraiser said, well, that's lovely. Shall I pop by a bit later for tea? And they continued the relationship with that little old lady.
Fantastic.
And as far
And
as I'm
also,
aware, she's still alive. So I don't know if she left anything in her will.
but lovely story, Mel. And also remember that your individual donors are a great marketing tool, because they will tell their friend and their folk and their family about your work if you're communicating with them. And if you doing good thank you letters and sharing with them the difference their donation has made. So also don't underestimate the value of those individual donors, because they are your marketing tool and they are your fundraising army out there, ladies and gentlemen, that can help you open doors to more individual donors. And imagine that little old lady told everybody she knew about your organization. Right, Melanie, on to you with the fundraising mix.
Yes, and I'm going to be quick because there are horrible contractor noises coming from the office next door. I wanted to very quickly cover this. I know that we've spoken about it before, but when we talk about an ideal fundraising mix, what we're trying to do is reduce risk. And in this case, the only time I would say to anyone, you may have one half of your pie be the same source of income, is if it's individuals. Because you'll never lose all of your individual donors at the same time. So in actual fact, every single donor makes up a tiny little slice of the individual pie on their own. And it's really important that we have individual donors in the mix. And it's not just because their funding is generally unrestricted. It's also because they are the lifeblood of our organizations. And in South Africa, we have not been as focused on individual giving as we could have been, because corporate giving was legislated post 1994. I think we all kind of fell into the trap that it's okay, the corporates will give because the corporates are mandated to give. And we haven't given enough attention to individual giving. So if you haven't been, now is the time. Make sure that your individual piece of pie grows and increases.
Absolutely. Thank you, Melanie. So multi-channel, and we've presented this in a workshop a couple of days ago, and it was well received. But multi-channel, and this is the global best practice. So obviously South Africa, and every country has a different role. But multi-channel is looking at your online donations, making sure that your website is mobile friendly and that your social media is there. Some charities do telephone fundraising. In South Africa, your Sea Rescue, your Association for the Blind, your political parties, they do a lot of telephone fundraising, which takes time and has been very successful. Peer-to-peer, and unfortunately with COVID, the ones that were doing face-to-face in the malls have had a challenge, but peer-to-peer is still attracting individuals. So whether it's online, whether it's mobile, whether it's phone campaigns, peer-to-peer, you're still attracting individuals. Multi-channel also looks at major donors. How do you attract major donors? How do you attract donors from social media? How do you attract donors from direct mailing? South Africa, we have challenges with direct mailing, but for those of you that have the budget and can afford to do direct mailing abroad, it still works. Your advocacy, your opinion pieces and your blogs, specifically international organizations like your International Federation of the Red Cross, Amnesty International, Greenpeace, they're doing a lot of work around advocacy. And because people then have an affiliation with that advocacy and understand the why, they sign up for a donation. Your website is probably we've got a guest speaker talking about that a little bit later. You've probably got your best tool to do donor acquisition is your website and social media. Emailing campaigns with the email systems, you can put good email campaigns together that almost replace the direct mail, but you've got to be targeted, you've got to know what you're doing. Direct response television adverts, they're not big in South Africa because the cost of advertising is so huge, but there are some charities that have successfully done those. And then before the day of COVID-19, when we could still have events were very successful. The reason why we put this slide up in the presentation is that every single one of these touch points can help you grow your individual donors, or can be a tool to onboard an individual donor, because it's so important. It's not only about how you attract that donor, but it's how you onboard that donor and make it easy for them to give, so that they can give regularly. So analyze your organization. And we said this on a presentation earlier this week, Mel and I, when we did a presentation, is get a friend, get a colleague, get a board member, get somebody from another charity to go and look at your multi-channel appeals and your organization and critique it. Because we often don't see the challenges because we put it together and we work on it every day. But get somebody else that's on this group who you can connect with and say, hey, look at mine, I'll look at yours, and give me feedback. Because unless you got independent, objective feedback, you won't see where you're dropping the ball and where you could improve. Right, I'm going to hand over to one of our guests. We're very privileged to have Jill Bates with us. Jill is the CEO of Charity AIDS Foundation. And I'm going to ask Jill to unmute and put her video on. I'll start video. There we go. Hi, Jill. Welcome.
Good morning, Kelvin, and good morning, colleagues. And thank you so much for that very warm and generous introduction. And of course, a very warm welcome and good morning to all colleagues on this call. It's really such an enormous privilege for me to be invited to join you in this important discussion this morning. And I'm very grateful for the invitation. So thanks so much, Kel and Melanie. As Kelvin has indicated, it's also my privilege to lead an organization in this country called Charities Aid Foundation Southern Africa, that many of you may be familiar with. We are a registered non-profit organization with PBO status, and we've been operational in South Africa for over 22 years. We're known as a civil society infrastructure organization. And when I first joined, I thought that sounds like a very big word for very clever people. So I had to swat that up. And effectively what it means is that CAPSA functions as the bridge between the world of philanthropy and civil society. So we work at that intersection where we join and connect CSI, donors, into South African civil society via our non-profit sector. We exist, colleagues, primarily to grow giving in Southern Africa. And because of our name, many people think that we are fundraisers, which we are not. Our primary reason for being is really to grow and champion giving through various advocacy and lobbying efforts. We have different offerings, obviously being a bridge between both worlds. We serve both the corporate sector and the non-profit sector. And we offer a variety of services just so that we can absolutely grow giving in Southern Africa and across the world. And we are also very privileged to be a proud member of the CAF Global Alliance. So we are part of an alliance and we have a presence in a number of countries across the world. For example, the UK, the USA, Canada, India, Russia, Brazil, Bulgaria, Australia, and most recently I'm happy to announce that Turkey has joined our global alliance. And our different geographies notwithstanding, our primary reason for being remains the same. We want to move as much philanthropic money across as possible. We also realize the significant society and yourselves as the non-profit sector as a core pillar of society. And part of our work involves ensuring that this critical sector remains resilient. We in South Africa know with our history that civil society has played an incredibly powerful role in respect of holding government to account in terms of and really just being a voice for good. So we have a very, very proud history of civil society in our country. It is our primary responsibility to ensure that the society is recognized, is promoted, and is supported. So the various services we run, many of you will be familiar with them. We look after CSR funds, we help with fund management, Employee volunteering is a critical component of our services. Corporate clients are asking for our support as they prepare for their annual BEE verification audits. And that again is a great opportunity for the nonprofit sector. The BEE landscape presents an opportunity for nonprofits to receive socioeconomic development funding from corporates. So we assist those corporates to show that we have allocated their funds to registered nonprofit organizations. They get the BEE scorecard points. The charity gets the money, a perfect storm. We also offer payroll giving services, which I'll talk about later, and which is particularly pertinent to your topic today. And because we advise our clients in respect of their CSI funding, we use evidence-based research in our advice to clients. So a huge part of our work involves both local and international research, and just looking at trends, opportunities, roadblocks, who's giving what to where across the world. So today I'm really, really excited to share some of this research with you. There's so much to share, and this morning Kelvin and I thought let's just really share the most important things for our audience. So CAF has prepared an annual research report called the World Giving Index. It comes out annually, and last year we decided to do something different. We felt, why don't we coordinate all the findings in a consolidated 10-year report of data globally across the world. So let's look at what's happened. Let's look at the trends across the world in the last 10 years. And effectively, this report measures generosity behaviors. And there are three that we looked at specifically. We looked at, for example, have you donated cash to a nonprofit organization in the last 12 months? Have you perhaps volunteered your time at an organization? And thirdly, our question was, have you asked a stranger? Have you helped a stranger in the last 12 months? And throughout the years, initially the global north, obviously having the most developed economies and the deep pockets, they were leading in terms of helping on all three levels. But throughout the last 10 years, we've actually noticed a most fascinating trend, and that is the global north is becoming less generous in its giving practices. And the global south, traditionally the ones that have a lesser developed economy, are actually closing the gap between the global south and the global north, which is really, really helpful and hopeful to see. And in fact, we was absolutely blown away. Of the biggest rises, 3 of these are in Africa. So that would be Kenya, that would be South Africa and Rwanda. To our history of generosity, we've obviously been driven, we think, by the spirit of Ubuntu and Harambee, and that is the need to recognize that, you know, our joint humanity binds us, and we are people because of other people. So that powerful philosophy is really translating into giving behaviors, and that's really, really exciting to see. So I think that, you know, despite the challenges that we now face throughout the 10 years, whether countries have been in economic free fall, whether there have been civil wars, natural disasters, giving practices might change slightly. There might be less cash being given, but people are more willing to donate cash, time, goods, etc. So the spirit of giving is very much alive on the African continent. We also wanted to look at how people give to charitable organizations. And we partnered with our parent company in CAF UK, as well as the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation, Big Lotteries Fund, as well as the Aga Khan Foundation, because we wanted to understand what else is happening in Africa on our continent. And, you know, the findings, again, the geography is notwithstanding, the findings were very similar. in that the vast majority of people wanted to give cash. So this research has taught us that absolutely cash is king. There's no doubt about that. People are also very happy to donate goods, services, food, etc. So it's really been a most inspiring study. Now, colleagues, this study was written in South Africa during February 2020. And obviously, the country went into lockdown on the 27th of March, less than a month later. And that obviously has changed the landscape drastically in our country. However, having said that, we at CAFSA can share with you that the outpouring of assistance from both individuals and corporates, the calls that CAFSA has received have been absolutely amazing. Some people have said, look, I don't really have much cash, but can we help with food? Can we help with clothes? Corporates are saying, we really need to be doing more. And I think at this point, I'd really also like to share with you, if I may, about CAFSA's flagship Give As You Earn program. And this is essentially as a payroll giving program. It's been in existence for 20 years. And the simple process is that individuals who sign up with companies as employees during their onboarding process are offered the opportunity by their HR departments to contribute a portion of their monthly salary to a charity of their choice. And the fabulous thing about this is that in many instances, the corporate chooses to match. So we've had some wonderful corporate clients over the years across all sectors, mining, legal, insurance, etc., who have opted for this program. And how it works very simply, that the individual's donation is paid across, and we then validate, and I think it was Kelvin mentioned this, we will not pay over any donations that are not going to a fully validated organization. And this gives the donor great comfort that the funds that they are donating on a monthly basis are going to the charity that is in good standing, where the governance and the compliance is good. So they have comfort and they don't need to worry. Money is good, the reporting. So it's a really, really easy way to give. But colleagues, I think the most important point that I want to share with you, and perhaps I'll end on this, Kelvin spoke about the fact that some people even just donate a small amount, for example, 50 Rand a month. And while I was preparing for our talk this morning, I just had a look at some of our stats over the years. And I can tell you that over a period of 9 years, with those small amounts of money coming in every month that are unrestricted, colleagues, and this is also the important thing to remember, this money goes to the charity in an absolutely unrestricted way. In the last few years, CAFSA has been able to allocate an amount of 32 million Rand of unrestricted funds into the nonprofit sector. So I think this is an incredible opportunity both for corporates and for the nonprofits, because we now know that unrestricted funding is absolutely critical during these very I think is an absolute secret weapon. It is incredible in its potential and its opportunity. And I think it's an area that we really, really need to be foregrounding and be very deliberate in as we plan our fundraising and strategic activities. And I think as COVID-19 has shown us, colleagues, that in terrible adversity, there is also amazing opportunity to innovate and to collaborate and to do things differently. And our research is showing us that, as I say, notwithstanding the terrible circumstances that prevail in the world at the moment, our country offices throughout the world are also seeing a huge outpouring in support and people wanting to give. So I wanted to leave that message with you. Very happy to share the full research report if that will be interesting for you. And just once again, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Calvin.
Thank you so much, Jill. That's really, really informative, and we really appreciate all the information and the sharing. Yeah, and we've got some questions which we'll go through in the chat. I'm going to hand over to Rian. Rian Fisher is my business partner and works on the other side of our business, which looks after digital. And he's going to be talking to us about how digital can grow your individual donors. Rian, over to you.
Thanks, Kelvin. Guys, for those of you that don't know me, I've worked with Kelvin since 2014. My background is actually in e-commerce, and I worked in corporate for many years. And then in 2014, we formed this business, and we actually brought my skills and Kelvin's history in the NPO sector together, because we saw that there was a trend in fundraising to move towards digital. So I just wanted to give you or share a little bit in terms of my experience, what I found with the digital landscape in the NPO sector since we started the business. So just for a bit of clarity, I would define digital fundraising that sits in various sectors. So you have a website, you have social media channels, QR coding, SMS giving, newsletter giving, email giving. So all of those would sort of be grouped under digital. And just in my experience, digital fundraising, in my opinion, is almost like the lazy man's fundraising, because you make a once-off investment that you look after, but it's not labor intensive, it's not cost intensive, and actually grows organically over a period of time. So you don't have to put the same effort into it every day, what you would do in offline fundraising. So you, for instance, don't need an army of fundraisers. You need a fair size budget to make sure that you set all of these tools up correctly from the word go. One of the big things that I've noticed that actually works quite well at time of setup is make your decision in terms of how you want to handle your database. Are you going to invest in a CRM system that will automate it? There were comments earlier about, immediate thank yous to donors once they make a donation. So there are various digital tools that you can actually use, to enhance your fundraising. The other thing also that was quite interesting to me is that with digital, you actually get a lot of insight into the profile of your donor. So historically, I was led to believe when I started in the sector that donors that give are traditionally over the age of 40, they're mostly female, they stop giving at the age of 65, etc. With using the analytic tools that are available to you, and we're not talking about complicated tools. I mean, if you can navigate Facebook or Instagram, you can navigate the insights that come with it to actually do a bit of a review of your donor, where they live, how old are they, so that you can tweak your campaigns based on their interest. With some of our clients, we've actually noticed that our donor profile has changed so much, where it used to be in the 40 plus segment. It has dropped down to the age of 25. So you've got to question yourself that how am I marketing to my audience? Am I still using the same tone of voice for a 40-year-old that I would use for a 25-year-old? So you can tweak your campaigns accordingly. The other thing also that's very important to remember with digital is that, it's no use spending 20,000 Rand investing in a website and think it's going to generate income for you. It doesn't work in isolation. Like all things marketing, you have to use all the channels and all the opportunities available to you simultaneously. You are not going to launch a product like a toothbrush by putting an ad in a community newspaper. You are going to go national with the message. You're going to do billboards. You're going to go, radio. You're going to do it on the website. You're going to do it via newsletter. In the non-profit context, I mean, if you want to be an authority in terms of who you are, because let's say you've historically relied on offline fundraising and you now want to move into the digital space and you want to target a new set of donors that are unfamiliar with who you are. Because most non-profits, face it, are not the big guys like the WWF, you know, so, or Greenpeace. So they're lesser known brands, so they have to build their brand within the donor segment. So you have to do these things. You have to have blogs. You have to make sure your website is updated. You've got to have an aggressive social media marketing strategy. You've got to look out for media reports on the topic that your program serves. So, for instance, if you work in the youth space, look out for articles in the media about youth development, for instance, and comment on that so that you can become an authority in that particular space. All of that leads to an increased brand awareness that leads to donor confidence in giving. The other thing that I want to mention, Google AdWords grant. This topic has been covered by various workshops in the past. For those of you that are not aware, so most commercial companies will pay a fortune to actually land on the first 3 pages on the Google search for a related product or service. So if you want to, or if you need for a plumber and you go to Google and you say plumber Johannesburg or plumber Pretoria, the first 3 displays that come up at the top of the page are paid advertising, and the people pay a lot of money for that ranking. Now, if you want to go the digital route and invest in the website, you need to get traffic to your site. The only way that you can do that, there are 2 ways actually: organically, by writing relevant content that will rank over a period of time, or paid advertising. Now, nonprofits don't have the deep pockets that commercial companies have, but they can access a $10,000 US Google grant that they can apply for, managed by an external company. And I say managed by an external company, there are a lot of nonprofits that have come to know about the product. They apply for it, but they don't know how to manage it, and then they get deregistered. So if you qualify for it and you get it, the best way forward is to actually approach a digital agency, commercial agency, and ask if they would manage this grant for you pro bono. And that way you actually consistently drive traffic to your website. I want to just quickly touch on social media giving. Social media giving, it's a very powerful tool. When we do an analysis of social media channels for our clients, the very first thing that we notice, and most MPOs and even corporate companies struggle with this, the people that follow and like their pages are not necessarily the audience that they want to talk to. We all assume that we are going to do social media posts and people on social media are going to respond with money. Evidently, most of the people that follow you on social media are either beneficiaries that can't give, or they're staff members that won't give. So you have to find a strategy that over a period of time you can actually target the right demographic with a promoted ad so that you can actually build that following. So promoted ads are actually quite inexpensive to do. Some of you might also know that Facebook internationally, and even on Instagram, they've got some very powerful fundraising tools, but they have not made them available in South Africa as yet. But there are still things that you can do locally. I mean, a good example, for instance, internationally, Facebook would allow you to give, in lieu of your birthday, you could do a birthday fundraiser. But the charities that are listed on that particular service are only international at this stage. You can, for instance, compile an offline digital gift card campaign that you can link to your social media in the meantime, that will allow people to give. The other thing also, you've got to be able to measure how effective your social media giving is. And there's a very clever way of doing it. It's called a Facebook pixel. Because evidently people are not going to give on Facebook because Facebook doesn't allow you to accept donations. You want that them to navigate to your website, but you can generate a Facebook pixel. Just Google it and you'll get information about that. It's a little code that gets placed on your website, and it actually tracks the interaction between social media and your website so that you know where the conversion took place from a campaign that you had on social media. A few benefits about individual giving. I mean, corporate giving, I think we all know the space. It's overtraded. Everybody goes after the same donors. The benefit of individual giving is that those individual givers are not going to jump ship based on the latest fad. You know, we've seen, for instance, with COVID, corporates have pledged a lot of money. in terms of COVID support. If you are writing the right emotive campaign about your programs and beneficiaries that you are supporting, if a donor signs up, they are very likely going to be a donor for life. The great benefit, and it comes back to the fundraising mix, you're not putting all your resources in one channel. If one individual giving donor decides to stop giving for whatever reason, you're not really going to fill the bench. Big benefit. And there's no magic wand for quick money, but individual donors do respond immediately on an emotive campaign. If you can write a really great hot campaign as to why your programs need to be supported, they will definitely respond immediately. I want to share with you also just a case study. One of the animal welfare non-profit clients that we work with, as we went into lockdown, we automatically assumed that a lot of people will be affected financially. People will lose their jobs. I mean, it's no secret that in South Africa, 3 million people are currently unemployed as a result of COVID. However, when we actually went down to level 3, that particular nonprofit had an AGM, and I did some stats for them. Our individual giving, our online giving via the website, actually increased by 65% year on year. We had more donors signing up during COVID than what we had in the previous financial year. So it's really powerful. And then lastly, what I wanted to, which is something that I always say, no two nonprofits are equal. So what may work for nonprofit A is not necessarily going to be as effective for nonprofit B, so keep it in mind. People respond to emotive ideas. So for instance, if your nonprofit works with animal welfare, or it works with bursary programs for university students, you have to understand that the public are going to react differently, because people will almost put their money where they see that there's a higher need. But it should not stop you from actually starting on this journey and putting it in place. Also, this is something that is growing organically. I mean, 20 years ago, actually, I was in a meeting at the corporate company where I worked, where we spoke about the relevance of having a website. We are way down the line in terms of that. And unless you're part of the setup now to establish your online giving effectively, you're going to miss out in the years to come. That's it from me.
Thank you so much, Rian. Thank you so much for sharing and giving us so much knowledge. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I think there's been some great ideas between both Jill and Rian of the reality is that you need to get going on your campaigns, and you cannot wait, and the time is now. Right, let's move on. Strategy. And now I'm completely lost in my track. Mel, was this myself or yourself that's doing strategy?
It was me, and I'm going to be really quick about it because I know that we are running out of time. I just wanted to touch on it. We've spoken about strategy, but basically that nonprofit strategy is a plan that explains how you will go about raising cash and from whom. And so, of course, individuals will form part of that process. And when you focus on individual giving, there are 5 big questions to keep in mind. Goal: how much do you want to raise? And what are you going to do with it? Because what you've also got to remember is you're going to need to report back. Certainly not in the same degree of intensity or detail that you would perhaps to a corporate donor, but you are going to have to say something. So bear that in mind. Who is your audience? Who are you going to look for to give this money? And why should they give? And that's always an interesting one. Make sure that you develop a clear message, what you want from the donor and why you want it from them, which leads me to making that ask really simple. Yes, so many donors don't give because they weren't asked, but you've also got to make sure that your ask is clear and easy to understand. And in the last of our 5 points, choose the right activities. As Rian so rightly said, not every campaign will work for every donor. So you have to find the campaigns that will work for yours.
Absolutely. Thank you, Melanie. And in the interest of time, we're going to move right along. When you're doing that ask, make your request very clear and simple. And we've put 3 points up, just 3. Statistics and research has shown globally, if you just say we need help, you're not going to get help. But if you say 200 Rand will sponsor an animal in a shelter for a month, 200 Rand will plant a tree, 50 Rand will feed a child, 1,000 Rand will pay for a bursary. You have to have an ask amount with a tangible. What are we asking the person to give? Research has also shown through organizations like the Resource Alliance that have done lots of research on this. Limit your choice. Give them 3 options. A 50 Rand, 100 Rand, 150 Rand. 100 Rand, 200 Rand, 500 Rand. Because, and research has shown us that people are most likely to go to the middle figure. So be very clever in your design of your ask. And then create a sense of urgency. We need to raise money for a new boat for the NSRI before the summer season because we need a new boat in Walvis Bay. That's a clear deliverable. We need 500,000 Rand for a boat by November so that we've got a new boat for the December season. Create that sense of urgency. Give people a time frame so they know. Because if you don't create the sense of urgency, they'll go, oh, yeah, I'll do it tomorrow. But if it's, and that's what works in the emergency appeals when you've got a Haiti, when you've got floods, when you've got world disasters, when you've got COVID, is that sense of now. So create that sense of urgency. It's very, very important. And that goes back to your ask and your strategy. Right, we're on to Q&A. And I know we're very short of time, Mel, so we literally got time for probably 2.
Okay, so one of the first questions we received was from Mpho. And the question is, how do we ask nicely? Are there documents or examples of ways to ask? Because I believe if you don't ask well, you won't receive. And Mpho's also asked us about whether we have a strategy template or a strategy document that he could adapt.
Do you want me to answer those?
Yes, please.
Okay, so on the second question, Mpho, no. You need to respect that every charity works really hard in developing its documents, and it's the IP of that charity. And even if a consultant does it, it's still the IP of that charity that paid for it. Google's your best friend. There is templates on Google. And also, try and find a mate that's willing to share it and give you guidance. But I don't think you're going to get a competitor charity that's going to say, there's my strategy for you to copy. But Google is your best friend. And the ask nicely, it's about your wording. It's about having that emotive language. And again, Google's your best friend. I always say to charity fundraisers, if you're not giving to another charity, you're also doing yourself a disservice, because if you give to other charities as a donor, you will see how you are respected and treated, and you will get good ideas of what works and what doesn't work. Sign up to newsletters from other charities. Again, the World Wide Web is full of templates and examples. So I would say just spend a bit of time on the website doing your research.
Definitely.
Mel, next question.
Okay, I think I might be able to handle this one. What's the difference between trusts and foundations and international donors? Aren't most of the international donors trusts or foundations? Marie, that's very true. But we make the distinction between, when we talk about trusts and foundations, we're talking about South African ones. When we talk about individual donors, we'll generally put them all together. It might be an international government, it might be an international foundation, but we generally don't have a lot of those donors as South African NPOs. There are very few organizations that are in a position to segment within their international donors. So I hope that's answered the question for you.
Great, thank you, Mel. So we are out of time, so I'm going to be very quick. Sorry to cut you short, Melanie, but I do want to respect the participants before we lose people. We started something new. Today is the first one, and I'm being a bit biased because both Jill and myself will be speaking on this plenary. But we've started a new thing where every week at the fundraising talk, we're going to dedicate a slide towards the end for announcements of upcoming events that we can all benefit from that are not necessarily fundraising talk events. So if your charity is doing a webinar, has got an AGM, is doing research, please pop it to us before Thursday and we can put it up on the slide. We can limit it to probably 2 or 3 graphics on the slide every week, but use this platform as a marketing tool to promote webinars, educationals, events that are going to help your charity. We really would like to encourage that. Or if you find something that you're going to be attending that you think your colleagues on this network will benefit from, let us know and let's share. So there's an upcoming event on the 25th of August where Charity AIDS Foundation has done research around the impact of COVID-19 on the charity sector. And Joel, myself, and Brenda, who is the head of corporate investment at Cecil, will be doing a discussion around that. So please join us for that. Last but not least, what's coming up? Please save dates. Next week, Sarai Herbst is going to be talking to us about high net worth individuals. So how do you get money out of those multimillionaires that are out there? She's going to be sharing some good ideas, both globally and locally. 3rd of September, Melanie and myself, and we might have a guest speaker as well, we'll be talking on all things digital. So not just what we've covered today, but all things digital for a charity and why digital is so important for your charity. Mel, over to you to close.
Yes, so it's going to be super fast because I'm conscious of everybody's time. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I know we didn't get to all the questions. Please, if your question is burning and you need an answer, pop it into our WhatsApp group or drop Kelvin or myself an email. If you are not on our WhatsApp group and you would like to be, please get in touch with us via email and we will add you. Just make sure you give us your mobile number so we can. Thanks all very much and stay warm, stay safe.
Thank you, everyone. Last thing is this is recorded and the recording link will be put on our social media platforms for Melanie and myself and on the WhatsApp group before the end of the day. So please share it, download and learn from this. We look forward to seeing you next week. Stay safe, stay warm. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
End meeting.